Unexpected allies. The golden wheat fields of Iowa swayed gently in the warm summer breeze, their rhythmic dance a stark contrast to the tension that hung in the air. Zara, a Centaurian scout, crouched low in the tall grass, her iridescent skin shimmering despite her best efforts to remain hidden. Her large, almond-shaped eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of the Earth's defenders. Zara had been on this planet for 3 standard rotations, gathering intelligence for the impending Centaurian invasion. Her people, a race of beings from a distant star system, had long ago set their sights on Earth as their next conquest. But something about this mission felt different to Zara. The more she observed the humans, the more she questioned the righteousness of their cause. A rustling sound nearby snapped Zara out of her thoughts. She froze, her hand instinctively moving to the energy pistol at her hip. Through the stalks of wheat, she caught a glimpse of movement, something large and powerful. Her heart raced as she prepared for a confrontation. But what emerged from the wheat was not a human soldier or one of Earth's fierce predators. It was a horse, its coat a deep, rich chestnut that seemed to glow in the fading sunlight. Zara had studied Earth's fauna extensively, but nothing in her briefings had prepared her for the majesty of this creature in person. The horse approached her slowly, its liquid brown eyes fixed on her alien form. Zara remained still, torn between fear and fascination. As the animal drew closer, she felt a strange tingling sensation at the base of her skull, where her neural implant connected to her brain. Suddenly, a flood of images and emotions washed over her. She saw vast prairies teeming with buffalo, ancient battles with humans astride horses charging fearlessly into the fray, and quiet moments of connection between rider and mount. It was as if the horse was somehow projecting its species' entire history directly into her mind. "Impossible," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. She had heard rumors of Earth's unusual properties, of strange energies that defied Centaurian science, but she had dismissed them as propaganda meant to discourage invasion. Now, faced with this inexplicable phenomenon, she began to doubt everything she had been told. The horse nickered softly and took another step toward her. Instinctively, Zara reached out a trembling hand. As her fingers brushed the animal's velvet muzzle, another wave of sensation overwhelmed her. This time, she saw flashes of the future, cities in ruins, forests ablaze, and oceans choked with the debris of war. The horse was showing her the consequences of the Centaurian invasion. Tears streamed down Zara's face as the visions faded. She looked into the horse's eyes and saw not the dumb beast she had expected, but a creature of profound intelligence and empathy. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, knowing she couldn't expect a verbal response but hoping for some sign of understanding. The horse tossed its head and pawed at the ground. In that moment, Zara knew she had a choice to make. She could continue with her mission, paving the way for the destruction of this beautiful world, or she could do something that no Centaurian had ever done before. She could defect. Before she could ponder her options further, the sound of approaching vehicles cut through the evening air. The horse's ears pricked up, and it turned to look back the way it had come. Zara tensed, preparing to flee, but the horse remained calm. From over a nearby hill, 3 rugged jeeps appeared, each loaded with armed humans. Zara's heart sank. She had finally been discovered, and now she would likely be captured or killed. But to her surprise, the horse moved to stand between her and the approaching vehicles, as if shielding her from potential harm. The jeep skidded to a stop a short distance away, and the humans leaped out, weapons at the ready. Zara noticed that each of them wore a strange pendant around their neck, a silver horseshoe wrapped in what appeared to be copper wire. "Stand down," a voice called out. A tall woman with steel-gray hair and piercing blue eyes stepped forward. Despite her apparent age, she moved with the grace and authority of a seasoned warrior. "I'm Colonel Sarah Hawkins of the Earth Defense Force. Looks like Thunderbolt here has taken a shine to you, alien." Zara blinked in confusion. "You're not going to shoot me?" Colonel Hawkins smiled grimly. "If Thunderbolt trusts you, that's good enough for me. These horses of ours, they'd got a sense about people, even those who aren't people as we know them. The real question is, what are we going to do with you now? The Centaurian scout looked from the colonel to the horse. Thunderbolt, and back again. Her training told her to fight, to flee, to do anything but trust these humans. But the vision she had experienced, the connection she felt with this extraordinary creature, tugged at her hearts. Zara swallowed hard, knowing her next words would change the course of her life forever. I want to help. My people are coming, and I've seen what will happen if they succeed. I can't let that future come to pass. Colonel Hawkins raised an eyebrow. That's a mighty big statement, alien. How do we know we can trust you? Thunderbolt chose that moment to turn and nuzzle Zara gently. The touch sent another spark through her neural implant, but this time, instead of visions, she felt a sense of warmth and acceptance. Because, Zara said, her voice growing stronger, your horse has shown me the truth. And if Earth has creatures capable of such wisdom and compassion, then it's a world worth fighting for. The colonel studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right then, you've got yourself a chance. But understand this, one wrong move, and you'll wish we had shot you on sight. Clear. Zara straightened her posture, feeling a sense of purpose she had never known before. Crystal clear, Colonel. Now, where do we start? As the humans began to lower their weapons, Thunderbolt whinnied softly. Zara felt a surge of hope and determination. She had come to this planet as a harbinger of destruction, but now, standing in a field of golden wheat with an extraordinary horse by her side and a group of wary but willing humans before her, she realized she had found something far more valuable, a cause worth fighting for. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple, as Zara climbed into one of the jeeps, with Thunderbolt trotting alongside. She knew that the real battle was just beginning. The Centaurian armada was on its way, but Earth had secrets and strengths that her people had never imagined. And now it had one more defender, an alien scout turned unlikely ally. As the small convoy moved out, heading towards an uncertain future, Zara allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in her life, she felt truly free. The wheat fields whispered in the gathering darkness, bearing witness to the beginning of a most unusual alliance, one that might just save two worlds. Humanity's stand. The war room of the Earth Defense Force's underground headquarters buzzed with frantic activity. Holographic displays flickered with real-time data from around the globe, each one telling the same story. The Centaurian armada had entered the solar system and was rapidly approaching Earth. Colonel Sarah Hawkins stood at the center of the chaos, her weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of the central holomap. Beside her, looking decidedly out of place, stood Zara, the Centaurian defector. The alien's iridescent skin shimmered with anxiety as she watched her former people's ships draw ever closer to her new home. They're moving faster than we anticipated, Zara said, her voice tight with worry. The invasion fleet will reach Earth orbit within 12 hours. Sarah nodded grimly. Then we've got 12 hours to prepare one hell of a welcome party. She turned to address the room. Listen up, people. This is what we've been training for. I want every quantum steed unit mobilized and every EMP cannon charged. We may be outgunned, but we're not going down without a fight. As the assembled officers scrambled to carry out their orders, Zara marveled at the humans' determination. Despite facing a technologically superior force, there was no talk of surrender, no hint of despair. These people, she realized, possessed a strength that went far beyond mere weaponry. Colonel, Zara said hesitantly, there's something you should know about the Centaurian attack strategy. They'll target major population centers first, trying to cause maximum panic and disorganization. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Then we'll need to evacuate as many civilians as we can. But how can we possibly move millions of people in just 12 hours? A young lieutenant stepped forward, his eyes bright with an idea. Ma'am, what about the quantum steeds? We've been using them primarily for combat, but their ability to traverse great distances instantly could be invaluable for evacuation efforts. The colonel considered this for a moment, then nodded approvingly. Good thinking, Martinez. Zara, you've seen what our horses can do. Do you think it's possible? Zara thought back to her first encounter with Thunderbolt, the extraordinary horse that had shown her visions and changed the course of her life. In the weeks since, she had learned much about Earth's quantum steeds, horses that, through some twist of terrestrial magic or undiscovered science, could manipulate space-time itself. It's risky, Zara admitted, but it might be our best option. The Centaurians won't be expecting it, that's for sure. Then it's settled, Sarah declared. Martinez, coordinate with civilian authorities. I want every available quantum steed tasked with evacuation. Priority goes to children, the elderly, and key scientific personnel. As the lieutenant hurried off, Sarah turned back to Zara. Now, about our defense strategy. You know their weaknesses better than anyone. What do you suggest? Zara took a deep breath, pushing aside the last vestiges of loyalty to her former people. The Centaurian ships are heavily shielded against energy weapons, but they're vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses. If we can knock out their systems, even temporarily, it might give us the edge we need. Sarah's eyes lit up with fierce determination. EMP cannons it is, then. We'll give those alien bastards a light show they won't soon forget. Over the next few hours, the Earth Defense Force worked tirelessly to prepare for the coming storm. Around the world, people watched the skies with a mixture of fear and defiance. In fields and stables, on city streets and mountain paths, the quantum steeds were called into action. Zara found herself in a makeshift stable near the headquarters, surrounded by dozens of horses, each wearing the now familiar silver and copper pendants that seemed to focus their incredible abilities. Among them stood Thunderbolt, his intelligent eyes fixed on Zara, as if he could sense her turmoil. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, Zara confessed, stroking Thunderbolt's muscular neck. These are my people coming to attack your world. What if I'm wrong? What if there's a way to stop this without bloodshed? Thunderbolt nickered softly and pressed his forehead against Zara's. Once again, she felt the familiar tingle of connection, and a series of images flashed through her mind. Humans and horses working together throughout history, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds, forging a bond that transcended mere utility. The message was clear. Unity and cooperation were humanity's greatest strengths. And now, improbably, Zara was part of that unity. A commotion outside drew Zara's attention. She stepped out of the stable to see a crowd gathering around a large view screen. The Centaurian ships had entered Earth's atmosphere, their sleek, dark forms ominous against the blue sky. Colonel Hawkins' voice crackled over the base's speakers. This is it, people. Evacuation teams, you have your orders. Defense units, prepare to engage on my mark. Remember, we're not just fighting for our lives today. We're fighting for our right to exist as free beings in this universe. Give them hell. As if in response to her words, a brilliant flash of light erupted on the horizon. The first of Earth's EMP cannons had fired, sending a pulse of electromagnetic energy streaking towards the invading fleet. For a breathless moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, to Zara's amazement, one of the Centaurian ships began to list in the air, its engines sputtering and dying. A cheer went up from the assembled humans, quickly hushed as they waited to see the invaders' response. They didn't have to wait long. The sky lit up with the deadly glow of Centaurian energy weapons, raining destruction on the Earth below. But for every building that crumbled, for every patch of Earth scorched black, the humans struck back. EMP cannons fired in coordinated salvos, each blast claiming more enemy ships. And through it all, the quantum steeds worked their magic. Zara watched in awe as horses and riders winked in and out of existence, appearing in danger zones to whisk civilians to safety before vanishing again. It was a dance of courage and impossibility, a testament to the extraordinary partnership between humans and their equine allies. As the battle raged on, Zara felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Colonel Hawkins, her face streaked with soot, but her eyes burning with indomitable spirit. "We're holding our own for now," Sarah said, "but we need to press our advantage. I need you to come with me on a special mission. Think you're up for a little ride?" Zara glanced at Thunderbolt, who was already trotting over, sensing he was needed. She remembered the visions he had shown her, the future she had chosen to fight against. With a nod to Sarah, she swung herself onto the horse's back. "Where are we going?" Zara asked as Sarah mounted her own steed, a dappled gray mare with eyes that sparked with intelligence. The colonel grinned, a fierce and terrifying expression. "We're going to pay a visit to the Centaurian command ship. It's time to show your former leaders exactly who they're dealing with." As the two women prepared to leap into the unknown, Zara felt a surge of emotions she couldn't quite name. Fear, excitement, and something else. Something that felt a lot like hope. The quantum steeds tensed, ready to bend the very fabric of space-time. In that moment, with the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance, Zara realized that she had found her true home. Not among the stars with her own kind, but here on this improbable planet, fighting alongside these remarkable humans and their extraordinary horses. With a flash of light and a rush of wind, they vanished, racing towards a confrontation that would determine the future of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy. The invasion had begun, but humanity's stand was far from over. The real battle, Zara knew, was just beginning. Secrets of the Quantum Steeds. The void between moments stretched infinitely, yet lasted less than a heartbeat. Zara clung tightly to Thunderbolt's mane as they hurtled through the quantum foam, the very fabric of reality bending around them. Beside her, Colonel Sarah Hawkins rode her own steed with the ease of long practice, her eyes fixed on some distant point only she could see. With a thunderous crack, they materialized in what appeared to be a storage bay of the Centaurian command ship. Zara's heart raced as she took in the familiar alien architecture, all sleek lines and pulsing bioluminescent surfaces. They had done it. They had penetrated the heart of the invasion force. "By the void," Zara whispered, her voice filled with awe. "I never imagined the quantum steeds could transport us directly into a ship in orbit." Sarah dismounted smoothly, her hand resting on the energy pistol at her hip. "There's a lot about these beauties that might surprise you. Now, where's the command center?" Zara slid off Thunderbolt's back, her legs slightly shaky from the interdimensional jump. She oriented herself quickly, old memories flooding back. "This way," she said, pointing towards a pulsing corridor. "But we'll need to be careful. The ship will be crawling with guards." As if on cue, an alarm began to blare. Harsh red light bathed the storage bay, and the sound of running feet echoed from nearby passages. "So much for the element of surprise," Sarah muttered. "Looks like we'll have to do this the hard way." Thunderbolt and Sarah's mare, Nova, Zara remembered, pawed at the ground anxiously. The colonel turned to the horses, her expression softening for a moment. "You two need to get out of here. Find somewhere safe and wait for our signal." To Zara's amazement, the horses seemed to understand. With a soft whinny, they vanished in a flash of quantum energy, leaving the two women alone in the rapidly deteriorating situation. "Come on," Sarah said, drawing her weapon. "We've got a ship to sabotage." They raced through the corridors, Zara's knowledge of Centaurian ship design proving invaluable as they evaded patrols and made their way towards the command center. As they ran, Zara couldn't help but marvel at the colonel's determination. Here she was, deep in enemy territory, armed with only a pistol and her wits, yet she showed no fear. "How can you be so calm?" Zara asked as they paused at an intersection, checking for guards. Sarah's eyes twinkled with a mix of humor and steel. "Who says I'm calm? I'm terrified. But the thing about fear, kid, is that it only holds power over you if you let it. Right now, I'm choosing to be terrified and brave at the same time." Before Zara could respond, a squad of Centaurian soldiers rounded the corner. Time seemed to slow as both sides raised their weapons. But just as the air began to crackle with the charge of energy weapons, a familiar whinny echoed through the corridor. In a burst of light, Thunderbolt and Nova appeared between the two groups. The Centaurian soldiers, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of Earth creatures in the heart of their ship, hesitated. It was all the opening Sarah needed. "Down," she shouted, dropping to the floor. Zara followed suit just as the quantum steeds reared up, their hooves striking the air. A wave of energy pulsed outward, rippling through space-time itself. When it passed over the Centaurian soldiers, they simply vanished. Zara stared in disbelief at the empty space where the enemy had stood moments before. What happened to them? Sarah rose, patting Nova's flank appreciatively. "If I had to guess, they're probably enjoying the view from somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy right about now. Handy trick, that." As they continued their journey through the ship, now with equine escorts, Zora's mind raced. "I don't understand," she said. "How is any of this possible? These abilities go beyond anything in Centaurian science." Sarah smiled grimly. "That's because it isn't science. At least, not as we understand it. The quantum steeds are something else entirely. Something older and far more powerful." They reached the entrance to the command center, a massive door of living metal that pulsed with defensive energy. Zara placed her hand on the security panel, praying that her old clearance hadn't been revoked. To her relief, the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, chaos reigned. Centaurian officers rushed between stations, barking orders and receiving reports of the battle raging around Earth. At the center of it all stood High Commander Vex, his tentacled face contorted with rage as he watched his invasion plans crumble. "Now what?" Zara whispered, suddenly very aware of how exposed they were. Sarah's response was to stride forward, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "High Commander Vex, in the name of the people of Earth, I demand your immediate surrender." The command center fell silent, all eyes turning to the impossible human standing in their midst. Vex's face twisted into a sneer. "Surrender? To a primitive species that still relies on beasts for transportation? I think not." He raised a clawed hand, energy crackling between his fingers as he prepared to strike. But once again, the quantum steeds intervened. Thunderbolt and Nova stepped forward, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The air around them shimmered, and suddenly the command center was filled with images. Zara gasped as she recognized scenes from Earth's history, not just the triumphs and victories, but the struggles and perseverance. She saw humans and horses working together through ages of adversity, facing natural disasters, wars, and hardships. But through it all, there was a spirit of unity, of partnership that transcended mere utility. The Centaurians watched, transfixed, as the story of Earth unfolded before them. Zara saw confusion, then wonder, and finally something like understanding dawning on their alien faces. "You see," Sarah said, her voice quiet but filled with conviction, "we may not have your advanced technology or your vast fleets, but we have something far more powerful, a bond forged through millennia of shared struggle and triumph. The quantum steeds aren't our servants or our weapons. They're our partners, our friends. And together, there's nothing we can't overcome." High Commander Vex stared at the images, his earlier bravado fading. What are they?" he asked, gesturing to the horses. Zara stepped forward, feeling the surge of pride in her adopted home. "They're a mystery, Commander, one that neither humans nor Centaurians fully understand, but they've chosen to stand with Earth, and that should tell you everything you need to know about which side you should be on." For a long moment, the command center was silent save for the soft whinnying of Thunderbolt and Nova. Then, slowly, High Commander Vex lowered his hand. "Perhaps," he said, his voice heavy with reluctance, "we have been too hasty in our judgment of Earth." As the Centaurian leaders began to discuss terms of withdrawal, Zara felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She turned to Sarah, who was wearing a satisfied smile. "Is it really over?" Zara asked, hardly daring to believe it. The colonel chuckled, reaching out to scratch behind Thunderbolt's ears. "Oh, I doubt it. We've won a battle here today, but changing hearts and minds. That's the real war, and it's far from over." She looked at Zara, her eyes twinkling. "But I'd say we've made one hell of a good start, wouldn't you?" As the quantum steeds nuzzled their riders affectionately, Zara realized that she had witnessed something truly extraordinary. Not just a military victory, but a moment of connection and understanding between two vastly different species. And at the heart of it all were these magnificent creatures, these quantum steeds, whose true nature and origins remained a tantalizing mystery. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, Zara knew. But as she stood there, surrounded by former enemies turned reluctant allies, with the comforting presence of Thunderbolt at her side, she felt a surge of hope for the future. Whatever came next, Earth, her Earth now, would face it the way it always had, together, with courage, compassion, and a little bit of horse sense. The secrets of the quantum steeds might never be fully unraveled, but their impact on the galaxy was only just beginning. And Zara, once an alien invader, now found herself at the forefront of a new era of interstellar cooperation and understanding. The universe, it seemed, was full of surprises, and she couldn't wait to see what came next. Earth fights back. The weeks following the confrontation on the Centaurian command ship were a whirlwind of activity. While High Commander Vex had agreed to halt the invasion, centuries of expansionist ideology couldn't be undone in a single moment. Pockets of resistance among the Centaurian fleet led to sporadic skirmishes around the globe, even as diplomatic talks stumbled forward. Zara found herself in the unique position of bridge between two worlds, working tirelessly to foster understanding and prevent further bloodshed. She stood now in the rebuilt United Nations headquarters in Geneva, watching as human and Centaurian delegates argued over the terms of a lasting peace. "You can't simply expect us to leave and pretend this never happened," a Centaurian diplomat named Krell was saying, his tentacles waving in agitation. "Our people have invested vast resources in this campaign. We require compensation." The human representative, a stern-faced woman from India, leaned forward. "Compensation? For an unprovoked invasion of a sovereign world? I think not. If anything, it is Earth that deserves reparations for the damage your forces have caused." As the debate grew more heated, Zara felt a familiar presence at her side. Colonel Sarah Hawkins, now promoted to general, stood watching the proceedings with a mixture of amusement and frustration. "Politics," Sarah muttered. "Give me a straight fight any day." Zara nodded in agreement. "It's challenging, but necessary. We need to find a way forward that both sides can accept, or this tenuous peace won't last." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion at the entrance to the chamber drew everyone's attention. A young aide burst in, his face pale with urgency. "General Hawkins, we have a situation. A Centaurian warship has broken ranks and is approaching New York City. They're not responding to hails." The room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew between the human and Centaurian delegations, months of careful diplomacy threatening to unravel in moments. Sarah's voice cut through the din like a whip crack. "Enough. This is exactly what the hardliners on both sides want. We need to act, not argue." She turned to Zara, her eyes glinting with determination. "Looks like it's time for another ride. You with me?" Zara didn't hesitate. "Always." As they hurried from the chamber, Sarah spoke into her comm unit. "This is General Hawkins. I want every available quantum steed unit mobilized and en route to New York. We're going to try diplomacy first, but be ready for anything." They emerged into the crisp Swiss air to find Thunderbolt and Nova waiting, as if the quantum steeds had sensed they would be needed. Zara marveled, not for the first time, at the deep connection these creatures seemed to have with the humans they had chosen to ally with. As they mounted, Sarah turned to Zara with a grim smile. "Ready to make history again?" Zara nodded, her hearts racing with a mix of fear and excitement. Let's show them what Earth and her defenders can do. With a thought and a nudge, the quantum steeds leaped into action. The world blurred around them as they traversed the quantum foam, emerging moments later in the skies above New York City. The sight that greeted them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. A massive Centaurian warship hovered over the city, its weapons primed and glowing with deadly energy. Below, the streets were in chaos as civilians, flood and emergency responders struggled to maintain order. But between the ship and the city stood a sight that made Zora's breath catch in her throat. Hundreds of quantum steeds and their riders floated in the air, forming a living barrier between the threat and the people they had sworn to protect. Some were military personnel, others civilian volunteers, but all wore expressions of grim determination. Now that, Sarah said with pride, is a proper welcoming committee. They urged their mounts forward, positioning themselves at the forefront of the defensive line. Zara could see confusion and disbelief on the faces of the Centaurian crew visible through the warship's viewports. The sight of horses floating in space, defying every law of physics they understood, was clearly unsettling. Sarah's voice boomed out, amplified by technology that matched the Centaurian ship's communication systems. Attention, Centaurian vessel. This is General Sarah Hawkins of Earth's Defense Force. You are in violation of the ceasefire agreement. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will be forced to take action. For a tense moment, there was no response. Then, a familiar voice crackled over the comm system, one that made Zora's blood run cold. This is Admiral Zorn of the True Path, the voice announced. We do not recognize your so-called ceasefire. The destiny of the Centaurian people is to rule the stars, and no amount of primitive trickery will stand in our way. Zara's mind raced. Zorn had been one of the most vocal advocates for the invasion, a true believer in Centaurian superiority. If he was here, leading a rogue faction, the situation was even more dangerous than they had realized. Admiral Zorn, Zara called out, her voice steady despite her fear. This is Zara, formerly of the Scout Division. I implore you to reconsider. There is so much we can learn from Earth, so much potential for cooperation rather than conquest. Zorn's laugh was harsh and dismissive. Ah, the traitor speaks. Your words mean nothing, Zara. You have been corrupted by these humans and their beast magic. We will cleanse this planet and restore the purity of our mission. The warship's weapons flared to life, energy building to a crescendo. But in that moment, something extraordinary happened. The quantum steeds, as one, began to glow with an otherworldly light. Zara felt a surge of something flowing through her, connecting her to Thunderbolt, to Sarah, to every rider and steed in the defensive line. As Zorn's ship fired, a shimmering barrier sprang into existence, absorbing the deadly energy. The collected power of hundreds of quantum steeds, amplified by the unbreakable bond with their human partners, had created a shield unlike anything either humans or Centaurians had ever seen. By the void, Zara whispered, awestruck by the display. Sarah's grin was fierce and proud. Now that's what I call teamwork. All right, everyone. Let's show Admiral Zorn here what happens when you mess with Earth. What followed was a battle unlike any in Earth's history. The quantum steeds moved with impossible grace, blinking in and out of existence, always one step ahead of the warship's weapons. Riders used the steed's ability to manipulate space-time to redirect energy blasts, creating a dazzling display that lit up the New York skyline. Meanwhile, on the ground, a different kind of battle was taking place. News of the attack had spread, and all around the world, people were coming together. Social media exploded with messages of support for the defenders. In cities across the globe, humans and the Centaurians who had chosen peace gathered in solidarity, their voices raised in defiance of those who would choose war. As the fight raged on, Zara noticed something changing in the expressions of Zorn's crew. The certainty, the arrogance was fading, replaced by doubt, and in some cases, awe. They were witnessing something that challenged everything they had been taught about humanity's weakness, about their own superiority. In a desperate move, Zorn ordered his ship to charge directly at the city, hoping to break through the defensive line. But the quantum steeds were ready. As one, they moved to intercept, their combined power creating a swirling vortex of quantum energy. "Now!" Sarah shouted, and Zara felt thunderbolts surge forward. They plunged into the heart of the vortex, and for a moment, Zara thought she could see the very fabric of reality bending around them. When they emerged on the other side, Zorn's ship was gone, transported to a distant corner of the solar system, its weapons and engines disabled. The battle was over. Earth had stood its ground, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the strength of unity, the power of cooperation between species. As they descended to the cheering crowds below, Zara felt a profound sense of hope. This victory wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about showing a better way forward. The path ahead would not be easy. There were still hearts and minds to change, on both sides. But today had proven that anything was possible when humans and their extraordinary allies stood together. The quantum steeds had once again demonstrated that they were more than mere animals or weapons. They were partners, teachers, and perhaps the key to a future where the peoples of Earth and Centauri could learn to coexist and thrive together. As Thunderbolt's hooves touched down on the pavement of Times Square, Zara realized that she was no longer an outsider, no longer torn between two worlds. She was home, part of something greater than herself, and together with her human allies and their remarkable steeds, she was ready to face whatever challenges the universe might bring. The tide had turned. Earth had fought back, and in doing so, it had not just defended itself, but had opened the door to a future filled with possibilities beyond imagination. A new dawn for two worlds. 5 years had passed since the battle over New York City, a day now celebrated across Earth as Unity Day. The skyline of Geneva sparkled in the warm summer sun as Zara made her way through the crowded streets towards the newly constructed Interstellar Cooperation Center. The massive building, its architecture a blend of human and Centaurian design, stood as a testament to how far both species had come. Zara's iridescent skin, once a source of alienation, now drew smiles and waves from passers-by. Humans and Centaurians alike have become a common sight in cities around the world, the initial fear and mistrust giving way to curiosity, and in many cases, friendship. As she approached the center, Zara spotted a familiar figure waiting at the entrance. General Sarah Hawkins, her hair now streaked with more gray but her eyes as sharp as ever, stood next to Thunderbolt. The quantum steed looked as magnificent as the day Zara had first seen him, his coat shimmering with an otherworldly energy. "Ready for the big day?" Sarah asked as Zara joined them. Zara took a deep breath, smoothing down her formal attire. A fusion of human fashion and Centaurian ceremonial garb. "As ready as I'll ever be. I still can't believe they chose me for this." Sarah chuckled, patting Zara on the shoulder. Who better to be Earth's first ambassador to Centauri Prime than the woman who bridged our worlds? "Come on, let's not keep the delegation waiting." They entered the center, making their way to the Grand Assembly Hall. The room was packed with dignitaries from Earth and Centauri, as well as representatives from a dozen other alien races who had been drawn to Earth by tales of the quantum steeds and the unlikely alliance they had fostered. As Zara took her place at the podium, she saw faces that would have been unimaginable together just a few years ago. Former High Commander Vex sat next to the President of the United States, both looking expectantly at her. In the back, a group of young Centaurians chatted excitedly with human teenagers, comparing notes on their favorite Earth music and Centaurian poetry. But what truly caught Zara's eye was the section reserved for the quantum steeds and their chosen partners. Horses of every breed stood proudly next to humans from all walks of life. The silver and copper pendants they all wore glinted in the light, a symbol of the bond that had changed the course of history. Zara cleared her throat, and the room fell silent. Distinguished guests, Fellow beings of Earth and Centauri, I stand before you today, not just as your ambassador, but as living proof of what we can achieve when we open our hearts and minds to one another. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, human, Centaurian, and others from across the stars. 5 years ago, we stood on the brink of a war that could have destroyed both our worlds. We were divided by fear, by misunderstanding, and by the belief that our differences made us enemies. But then something extraordinary happened. Zara gestured to the quantum steeds. These remarkable beings, who we still barely understand, showed us a better way. They reminded us that the universe is full of wonders beyond our comprehension, and that true strength comes not from domination, but from cooperation. As she spoke, the quantum steeds began to glow softly, their ethereal lights spreading throughout the room. Zara felt the now familiar tingle of their energy, a sensation that never failed to fill her with awe. The alliance between humans and quantum steeds taught us all a valuable lesson, she continued. It showed us that the most powerful partnerships are those built on mutual respect, trust, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. This is the foundation upon which we have built our new interstellar community. Zara's voice grew stronger, filled with passion for the future she could see unfolding before them. As I prepare to journey to Centauri Prime, I carry with me the hopes and dreams of 2 worlds. But more than that, I carry the knowledge that we are embarking on the greatest adventure our species have ever known. Not conquest, not subjugation, but a joint exploration of the cosmos and our place within it. The room erupted in applause, the sound of human voices mingling with the multi-toned resonance of Centaurian approval. As the cheering died down, Zara noticed a commotion near the back of the hall. To her amazement, a group of quantum steeds was making its way down the central aisle, led by Thunderbolt. The majestic horses stopped before the podium, and Thunderbolt stepped forward. His eyes met Zora's, and suddenly she was overwhelmed by a vision, not of the past this time, but of the future. She saw great ships, built by human and Centaurian hands, exploring the farthest reaches of the galaxy. She saw new worlds, teeming with life and possibility. And everywhere, she saw quantum steeds, serving as bridges between species, unlocking the secrets of the universe. As the vision faded, Zara realized that everyone in the room was staring at her in wonder. Somehow, impossibly, they had all shared in the experience. The quantum steeds had given them a glimpse of the future they could build together. With tears in her eyes, Zara stepped down from the podium and approached Thunderbolt. She placed a hand on his neck, feeling the warmth and power that radiated from him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Thunderbolt nickered softly, and Zara felt a sense of joy and anticipation that she knew came from him. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, not as separate species, but as a united front against the unknown. As the assembly broke into excited discussion, Sarah joined Zara by the quantum steeds. "Well," the general said with a grin, "I'd say that's one hell of a send-off for our new ambassador. You've come a long way from that scared scout I found in an Iowa cornfield." Zara laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "We've all come a long way, and we have so much further to go." She looked around the room, at the faces filled with hope and excitement. "I never imagined I'd be saying this, but I can't wait to show my people, all my people, the wonders of Centauri Prime." As the festivities continued around them, Zara, Sarah, and the quantum steeds stood together, a living symbol of the unprecedented alliance that had changed the course of 2 civilizations. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still challenges to overcome, prejudices to dismantle, and mysteries to unravel. But for the first time in the history of both Earth and Centauri, the future stretched out before them not as a threat, but as a shining promise. The quantum steeds had shown them that the universe was stranger and more wonderful than they had ever imagined. And now, united in purpose and bound by friendship, the beings of Earth and Centauri were ready to take their place among the stars. As the sun set on Geneva, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Zara looked up at the first stars becoming visible. Soon, she would be up there, carrying the hopes and dreams of two worlds. But she knew she wouldn't be alone. With the wisdom of the quantum steeds to guide them, and the strength of unity to sustain them, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. A new dawn was breaking for Earth and Centauri. A dawn of exploration, cooperation, and limitless possibility. And as Zara stood there, surrounded by friends both human and alien, she knew that the greatest adventures were still to come. The universe was waiting, and together, they were ready to answer its call.